In tonight's news edition, His Royal Highness Prince Zayed bin Ra'ad is unanimously elected the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights after being nominated by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to replace Navi Pillay. Scores of Iraqis are killed during a battle over Baquba, and fighting shuts the main refinery, cutting off fuel and power supplies to parts of the country. And Egypt's Prime Minister Brahim Mahleb, followed by his cabinet members, take the oath of office in front of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour met here in Amman with Palestinian Minister of Tourism and Antiquities Rula Maaya to discuss joint tourism projects between Jordan and Palestine. Mansour said they should carry out joint tourism programs focusing on Islamic and Christian holy sites as well as on environmental and medical tourism. The Palestinian minister said the two sides enjoy tremendous tourism potential and have numerous destinations that are sure to attract the interest of tourists globally. Mansour was briefed by Jordan's Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Nidal Qatamin, and the Palestinian minister on the Executive Tourism Cooperation Program between the two sides for 2014 to 2017, which was signed yesterday. The program aims to boost tourism cooperation and enhance domestic and foreign tourism to the two countries. Foreign Minister Nasser Judeh said that the political turmoil in the Middle East should not divert attention from the Palestinian issue, the core of conflict in the region. Judeh spoke during a meeting with United Nations Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Robert Seri, to discuss the stalled Palestinian-Israeli peace negotiations. Judeh and Seri agreed that coordination and consultation should be ramped up among all parties in order to bring about peace. The foreign minister reiterated Jordan's support for the reinstatement of Palestinian rights, foremost of which is the establishment of an independent and sovereign state with East Jerusalem as its capital. The UN envoy said he backs Jordan's peace efforts under His Majesty King Abdullah. His Royal Highness Prince Zayed bin Ra'ad was elected the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights based in Geneva. Prince Zayed, whose last post was Jordan's permanent representative at the UN General Assembly, thanked His Majesty King Abdullah for the support he received during his tenure in New York. Prince Zayed was nominated earlier this month by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to replace Navi Pillay. He was approved by consensus for the 4-year term starting in September. He acknowledged the job entails enormous responsibilities and challenges and requires wisdom and a high level of coordination with various governments, civil society institutions, and UN agencies. Prince Zayed is a graduate of Johns Hopkins University and Cambridge University and has previously served as Jordan's ambassador to the United States and Mexico. Israel decided to widen a crackdown on Hamas in the West Bank after Israeli troops detained more than 40 of its members in search for 3 missing Jewish teenagers that Israel accuses Hamas of kidnapping. At a meeting of the Israeli Security Cabinet, it was agreed to make more arrests, put up roadblocks, and turn Palestinian houses into military observation posts to increase pressure on Hamas, while also debating a proposal to deport West Bank Hamas leaders to Gaza. The Palestinian Information Ministry said an entire population is being held hostage to the whims of Israeli occupation and accused Israel of inflicting collective punishment with its West Bank dragnet, a charge echoed by several international human rights groups. Since Friday, after the teenagers went missing, more than 200 Hamas members have been arrested. Israeli officials acknowledge the operation also aims to weaken Hamas. Late yesterday, the Israeli army launched airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, causing damages to homes. It said in a statement the airstrikes were in retaliation to a rocket fired by Hamas. In Iraq, at least 13 people were killed and 30 others wounded in a car bomb explosion in Baghdad's Sadr city, according to police and hospital officials. Separately, scores of Iraqis were killed during a battle over Baquba, capital of Diyala province, north of Baghdad, while fighting shut the main refinery, cutting off fuel and power supplies to parts of the country. Government forces say they repelled an attempt by insurgents to seize Baquba and residents, and officials said the dead included scores of prisoners from the local jail. ISIL fighters began their revolt by seizing the north's main city, Mosul, last week and have swept through the Tigris River Valley north of Baghdad, massacring hundreds of troops captured in their advance. With at least 300,000 people fleeing the fighting in Mosul, a senior UN official has flagged the risk of a mass exodus of Iraqi refugees from the sectarian bloodshed, further overwhelming nearby countries. We get more in this report.
Iraqi soldiers patrol the streets of Baghdad in a heightened state of security. Some residents are voicing concern following an extremist insurgency by the Islamic State of Iraq in the Levant in the north. The advance by ISIL may pose the biggest security crisis in Iraq since U.S. forces toppled Saddam Hussein in 2003. President Barack Obama made an announcement to the U.S. Congress saying the United States is deploying up to 275 military personnel to Iraq. He said the forces are for securing the safety of American personnel in Iraq as well as the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Obama also said he will keep the option open for launching airstrikes to help the U.S.-backed Iraqi government fight the insurgents. Political analyst Abdul Amir al-Majjar, however, feels the U.S. influence in the region up to the 2011 troop withdrawal could have played a part in the current crisis.
The Iraqi government did not share the viewpoint that United States adopted. In other words, Iraq became closer to the axis that is incompatible with America's view in the region. Therefore, I think that the United States had an indirect role and could stand behind what happened.
A UN human rights report issued today cautions on the risk that the Middle East may be on the brink of wider sectarian war engulfing Iraq and Syria, with radical Islamist insurgents kidnapping, torturing, and killing civilians. UN human rights Navi Pillay said forces allied with ISIL in northern Iraq have almost certainly committed war crimes by executing hundreds of non-combatant men over the past 5 years.
Well, we predicted a long time ago the dangers of spillover both ways, which is now becoming a regional spillover from here to there and there to here. And that is very sadly being realized in reality today. We are possibly on the cusp of a regional war, and that is something we're very concerned about.
Moreover, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said he has been urging Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to hold dialogue to try to stop the sectarian violence, and warned that governments who neglect human rights are creating breeding grounds for extremism and terrorism.
I'm deeply concerned about the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Iraq, including the reports of mass summary executions by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL. There is a real risk of further sectarian violence on a massive scale within Iraq and beyond its borders.
Ban did not say if the Iraqi government should include the radical Islamist group ISIS in its dialogue, nor did he comment directly on the possibility of Iran or the United States intervening in Iraq to support Maliki's government, but he said the country should have one government. He had repeatedly urged leaders in countries with security problems that they should pay attention to the fears and hopes of their people and not think that they are legitimate just because they are elected. Farah Ajlouni for the news at 10.
Over to Syria, where fighting continues between government forces and rebels in Daraa and Aleppo. There were also reports of fighting in Jawar on the outskirts of Damascus. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said at least 25 people were killed in barrel bomb attacks in Syria's northern city of Aleppo yesterday. Meanwhile, residents of the village of Kassab on Syria's border with Turkey began returning home. They were dancing, cheering, and waving flags in the main square a day after the army retook the area from rebels. A field commander in the Syrian army said the area, including the border crossing, is now under full control of government forces. While rejoicing their return, residents surveyed the damage inflicted on some of the village's buildings, including churches.
I am so happy that I returned, but there's a lot of damage. There's sadness in my heart, but there's even more joy that we have been able to return so quickly. Elsewhere, it has taken some people longer, but here we were only forced to stay away for 3 months. I can't help but salute the Syrian army and pray for its martyrs.
Egypt's Prime Minister Brahim Mihleb was sworn in as the head of a new government. The new government has retained the key economic and security ministers, but created a new investment post to attract businesses to the country, witnessing a rise in taxes to boost revenue. Mihleb took the oath of office in front of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who won a landslide election victory at the end of May. Al-Sisi had summoned Mihleb's cabinet to the presidential palace to take the oath of office at 7 a.m. and made clear the ministers should get used to the new timetable. Immediately following the swearing, the cabinet held its first meeting with Sisi, which went on for 7 hours. The White House said the United States has captured one of the suspected ringleaders of the attack on the U.S. diplomatic compound in Benghazi in 2012 that killed 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador. White House spokesman Jay Carney told journalists that the capture of Abu Khatallah is not the end of efforts to apprehend perpetrators, but it marks an important milestone. According to an earlier statement by the Pentagon, the suspect was captured on Sunday and is now in U.S. custody outside of Libya. U.S. President Barack Obama hailed the courage of special forces in capturing the suspect.
It's important for us to send a message to the world that when Americans are attacked, no matter how long it takes, we will find those responsible and we will bring them to justice. And that's a message I sent the day after it happened, and regardless of how long it takes, we will find you. And I want to make sure that everybody around the world hears that message very clearly.
Iran and 6 world powers relaunched talks today to rescue prospects for a deal on Tehran's nuclear activity by a July deadline. With time running short, negotiators face huge challenges to bridge gaps in positions over the future scope of Iran's nuclear program in less than 5 weeks. The talks stumbled during the last round in mid-May, and both sides accused the other of lacking realism in their demands. There was little indication whether the sides had moved towards overcoming the deadlock in their initial session, but an EU spokesman said all the parties involved are trying to reach an agreement as soon as possible despite an intense atmosphere.
Both sides are very realistic. I'd say that the atmosphere is, as ever, very workmanlike and a very good working relationship between the two sides. Everybody is aware that we are entering a phase of negotiations where things are getting quite intense. So we continue to work as hard as we can.
And to a U.S. efforts to protect the Pacific Oceans at the State Department's Our Ocean Conference, U.S. President Barack Obama announced new efforts to safeguard areas on the ocean. Those include measures to combat black market fishing that threatens the oceans, undermines the economy, and often supports dangerous criminals. Efforts also include a plan to expand the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument to a bit over 2 million square kilometers that would affect 7 islands controlled by the United States. Actor Leonardo DiCaprio was in attendance at the conference and pledged to donate an additional $7 million from his foundation towards meaningful ocean conservation project over the next 2 years.
Like bottom trolling, where huge nets We have systematically devastated our global fisheries through destructive practices like bottom trolling, where huge nets drag across the bottom of the ocean for miles, literally scraping up everything in their path, permanently destroying abundant underwater forests, teeming with every imaginable form of wildlife. And while we've heard a lot about the impacts of climate change on dry land, the oceans will be the sink that absorbs the brunt of our pollution and the danger of higher temperatures.
Film and music memorabilia from pop and Hollywood royalty is set to go under the hammer at Christie's sales room in London. Outfits, instruments, and film props dating back several decades comprise the 144 lot in Christie's sale dubbed Pop Culture Lasting Legacies. Estimates for the items range from £800 to £150,000. A key piece is a rare page of lyrics written by former Beatles John Lennon, expected to fetch up to £150,000 at auction. Other highlight pieces include a drum kit used by former Oasis drummer Tony McCarroll, expected to fetch £12,000 to £15,000, and a lace Empire line dress by Helen Rose, made for actress Grace Kelly when she played Princess Alexandra in the 1956 film The Swan. The dress is expected to fetch £30,000 to £50,000. The items will be sold on the 20th at Christie's South Kensington in London. In the latest update of the World Cup 2014 in Brazil, the U.S. beat Ghana 2-1. U.S. captain Clint Dempsey scored after 32 seconds, the fifth fastest goal in World Cup history. The Africans finally equalized after 82 minutes, but 4 minutes later, substitute John Brooks headed a winner just as the Africans thought they had snatched a draw. Tonight, all eyes are on Brazil and Mexico in their Group A clash in the Castelio Arena. The hosts are favorites and seek their 11th consecutive win, while Mexico come from beating Cameroon 1-0 in their World Cup opener. Far from football, the San Antonio Spurs delivered a decisive end to LeBron James' 2-year reign atop the basketball world by beating the Miami Heat 104-87 to win the NBA Finals 4-1. San Antonio, which outscored the Heat over the decisive second and third quarters, was paced in scoring by Kawhi Leonard, who had 22, while Manu Ginobili added 19. James, who led the Heat to titles the past 2 seasons, scored 31 points, but was largely ineffective after the first quarter when he had 17 points. San Antonio, who lost to the Heat in the finals a year ago, ignited the crowd hungry for the Spurs' first title since 2007 and their 5th overall. And finally, fair weather continues tonight with northwesterly moderate to brisk winds. Tomorrow, normal summer conditions prevail in most regions, with northwesterly moderate winds picking up in the afternoon. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a hot day tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and slightly high seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. His Royal Highness Prince Zayed bin Aid is unanimously elected the United Nations High Commissioner to Human Rights after being nominated by UN Secretary General. Scores of Iraqis are killed during a battle over Baquba, and fighting shuts the main refinery, cutting off fuel and power supplies. And Egypt's Prime Minister Ibrahim Mehleb, followed by his cabinet members, take the oaths of office in front of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.